I knew shit was sideways when the CEO cleared his throat and said, "Let's start with some exciting changes." His tie was crooked, his eyes gleaming like a raccoon pawing through trash. We were packed into that stuffy conference room like sardines in a can of failure. They even brought donuts, cheap ones, from the gas station around the corner, like we were supposed to eat sugar and forget our instincts screaming that something stank. The screens lit up. Zoom cameras blinking. Investors watching. Every department head looking like they'd already memorized their roles in this little Shakespearean betrayal. I'd been with this company 8 years, longer than all of them. Longer than the logo had that idiotic gradient. I'd been the one who kept OpsNet duct taped together during the 2020 crash. The one who figured out that nasty firewall loop no one dared admit even existed. I was the damn infrastructure. But today, I was a line item on a slideshow. And as part of our leadership refresh, the CEO chirped, we're parting ways with some legacy personnel, including our systems architect Rick Carlson. Applause. From the CFO, that smug latte-swilling snake who once asked me if Python was like Excel for nerds. Chuckles from marketing. One of them even said finally, under her breath. And then the camera cut to me. I didn't say a word. Just stood. Calm. Numb almost. My badge came off slow, ritualistic really. I walked to the front of the room, handed it to the CEO, and smiled. Tell the investors why the system collapses in 9 minutes. Dead silence. Like I'd just farted during a funeral, and nobody knew whether to laugh or cry. Then I turned and walked out. No yelling. No desk flipping. No burning things to the ground. That's what they expected. Some dramatic tantrum they could spin into a cautionary tale for the interns. But I don't do tantrums. I do architecture. I do stability. I do silent, ruthless precision. And I had done more than anyone in that damn building even realized. They never asked what kept the system from failing. They just assumed it didn't. You're probably wondering what I meant by 9 minutes. Let's just say when you build a house on your own blueprint, and no one else knows where the load-bearing walls are, the collapse ain't a matter of if. It's when. And hey, while you're here, before the next part unravels this mess in all its broken glory, tap that like button, subscribe, all that jazz. I know 97% of you won't unless someone asks, so consider this your nudge. It keeps the stories coming. And trust me, you're gonna want to see where this one leads. Anyway, I didn't even log out. Just walked past the HR glass box where some poor intern was pretending not to cry into a smoothie. My computer? Still running. My terminal? Still connected. But none of that mattered. Because in 9 minutes, they'd learn the truth. And I was already outside, lighting a cigarette with the same calm precision I used to override Colonel Panics. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't angry. Not really. I was just done holding up a structure that never once held me back. The automatic doors hissed open and the October air hit like a truth I'd been ignoring for too long. Clean, cold, and unforgiving. I didn't look back. Not at the building, not at the glass walls reflecting my outline like a ghost already scrubbed from memory. The kind of building that eats people like me. The kind that smiles while it kills. They'd be erasing my login by end of day. If they even knew which one was the real one. Joke's on them. I hadn't used my standard credentials since 2021. I didn't log out. Why would I? The system didn't care. It didn't run on checklists and passwords. It ran on me, my hands, my patterns, my habits coded into scripts no one even knew were running. I walked straight past the security gate. No badge to beep. Just a heavy breath and the sweet sound of my boots scuffing across polished tile one last time. Halfway down the street, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a tiny black USB. Unlabeled. Scratched. The one I used to keep a few unsanctioned recovery utilities on. The kind that bypassed the CTO's lockdown sandbox because his sandbox had more holes than Swiss cheese in a shootout. I looked at it, really looked, then dropped it into the nearest trash, like it was a cigarette I'd finished. Symbolic? Maybe. Or maybe just tired of being the only one who gave a damn. Behind me, through the glare of the sun bouncing off the building's facade, I caught a glimpse of someone in HR. Janine, I think. She was staring out like a war widow waiting for the call that never comes. She knew. Or maybe she suspected. Hell, She once sent me an IM that just said, "They really don't deserve you." I never responded. Never had time. Always fixing something. Always one fire away from total collapse. That's the betrayal no one talks about. Not the pink slip. Not the fake applause. But the slow, bleeding kind. 8 years of saving them from themselves, only to be tossed out like expired yogurt. I held that betrayal in my chest like a second heartbeat and kept walking. Meanwhile, 6 floors up, the server room was humming like a church choir before the sermon. Steady, self-important, unaware of the reckoning whispering through its circuits. Then faint, almost polite, a soft chirp. Warning. E-stop's demon unresponsive. Another chirp. Routing delay threshold exceeded. The logs began to fill with red flags. Little digital screams no one would notice until it was far too late. Because no one checked the logs. Rick always did. Rick always knew what to look for. But Rick had exited. Stage left. Curtain dropped. And the script they were now running? Unfinished. 0.4 minutes. That's all it took for the cracks to show. Not even enough time to finish a coffee. I was halfway to the corner diner when the first digital screams began. Silent, invisible, but loud as hell to anyone with access to the OpsNet console. Which, ironically, wasn't anyone in that damn boardroom. That's the funny part. They thought firing me was a plot twist. But there was no sabotage. No rogue code. Just gravity doing its job once you yank out the last support beam. At exactly 10:04 a.m., the eStops node stopped accepting new transactions. Cold. No fanfare. Just a polite timeout error that grew like mold, quiet, but fatal. The SLA monitors, those little green halos that kept investors feeling warm and safe, started blinking red. 1. Then 4. Then all of them. Back inside, the CTO Connor, the golden boy who once confused raid arrays with something from Mad Max, started sweating through his Patagonia vest. He clicked. Refreshed. Whispered to a junior dev. Try rerouting through the West region backup. No response, she muttered, frowning. Failover's not engaging. The chat window lit up on the main display. Investor Q4 fund. What's happening with East region failover? Connor didn't answer. Because the truth was simple. There was no documented East region failover. Not on paper. Not in Jira. Not in Confluence, Notion, Asana, Slack, or whatever overpriced, underused tool the CIO had bragged about last quarter. Because Rick, me never wrote it down. Not out of spite. Out of survival. Because if I'd documented every custom script, patchwork loop, and heartbeat monitor I'd built to keep that aging infrastructure from choking on itself, some consultant would have pitched replacing me with a Kubernetes cluster and a free trial of PagerDuty. They didn't want transparency. They wanted plausible deniability. And now they had it. All of it. Do we have the last rollback script for the Q daemon? Someone asked. Blank stares. Connor's fingers trembled over his keyboard. Check the RickOps repo. It's empty, said the junior dev, just a single README file. Inside the README? Just 4 words. Ask your new architect. Outside, I pushed open the greasy glass door of Marcy's diner. Same chipped linoleum. Same sour coffee that tasted like burnt tires and betrayal. I slid into my usual booth, nodded at Marcy, and didn't even need to order. Back inside, the OpsNet transaction logs were beginning to look like a battlefield. Client dashboards across the country? Frozen. Spinning wheels. Timeout banners. Angry calls hitting the support lines like hail on a tin roof. And I wasn't smiling. Not really. But somewhere behind my deadpan expression, beneath the bags under my eyes and the years of being the fix-it ghost they barely thanked, I felt something warm unfurling in my ribs. Not revenge. Just relief. Let the system breathe without me. Let them feel it. 0.6 minutes. That's all it took for the false confidence to slip off the CEO's face like latex in a heat wave. I can picture it even now, his smug grin twitching into confusion, eyes darting to his assistant's screen as she hissed, "Something's wrong with Jira." You could hear the taps getting faster, louder, a frantic rhythm of unearned authority meeting its first real test. Internal ticketing froze completely. No new tasks could be submitted. No status could be changed. The digital spine of the whole operation, locked in place like rigor mortis, had set in. And then it got worse. Much worse. Payroll batch ran. Then reversed itself. Accounts started flagging errors. Back-end scripts, once humming silently in sequence, began bumping into each other like drunk toddlers in a bouncy house. Someone yelled something about indexing failures. Another voice, sounded like finance, shouted, "Is anyone monitoring the comp queue? Half our contractor payments just bounced." The room turned to chaos. Zoom investors started logging off. One screen blinked out. Then another. Then 5 more. You could almost hear the money evaporating from the air. That's the thing about systems. They remember who built them. And mine? It wasn't designed to break. It was designed to need me. I didn't rig it. I didn't booby-trap it. I just never pretended it could run on autopilot. My scheduling daemon logic wasn't written in Python. It was written in pain. Late nights. Coffee-fueled marathons. Emergency patches at 2:43 a.m. while my dog barked at raccoons in the yard. Wait, was Rick the only one who knew the scheduling daemon logic? A junior engineer finally asked, staring at the frozen screen like it might answer her back. Connor didn't respond. Because yeah, I was. I hadn't shared it because no one ever asked. And because the last time I did share something critical, they passed it to a DevOps intern who rewrote it into a containerized solution that ate its own logs and set off a 4-state billing error. So yeah, I kept it in my head. Because they didn't deserve to have it anywhere else. Somewhere in the chaos, the CFO's screen just went black. Mid-sentence. Her mouth still open as the projector behind her blinked out. "It's dead," someone whispered. "The whole thing's just gone." Outside, I stepped into the alley beside Marcy's and lit a cigarette with fingers that had spent the last decade solving crises no one even knew were happening. Smoke curled into the crisp fall air. I didn't check my phone. Didn't need to. They'd figured it out. The smile on that CEO's face? Gone now. And in its place? The dawning horror that I wasn't bluffing. I told them 9 minutes. And we were just getting to minute 7. Inside the building, panic was thick enough to chew. Legal was the first to panic audibly, hissing into a muted conference line with the board's counsel. Did we ever formalize a succession plan for Rick's systems? The silence that followed said everything. The CIO, Charles, the guy who once spent $180,000 on a digital transformation initiative that amounted to slapping a Slack bot onto our email servers, finally spoke. Voice tight. Defensive. No one really understood the code. But it always worked. We didn't need to. He didn't mean it to sound as stupid as it did. But it did. Because it was. See, my systems didn't work because they were simple. They worked because they were living things. They responded to input like muscle memory. I didn't build infrastructure. I built reflexes. Real-time adaptations layered over outdated hardware and Band-Aid cloud integrations, each patch balancing on the one before it. Pull one thread wrong, and the whole mess folds in like a sinkhole. And now, the thread was gone. The CTO, Connor, still deluded enough to think a reboot would solve structural ignorance, made the call. Let's reset routing through the fallback stack. We'll stabilize on the legacy loop, then escalate to Tier 3 support. He hit the command. And the system? It tried to listen. Only it didn't know where to go. The fallback stack was routing traffic to an IP set deprecated 5 years ago. It was an old test server. I'd repurposed it once during a vendor migration. Left it alive in a dark subnet as a diagnostic ghost. No one ever shut it down. Because no one ever knew it existed. And now, the routing loop kept pinging it like a dog scratching at a door no one answered. Request. Timeout. Retry. Timeout. Loop. Connor stared at the error log in horror. It's going in circles, he whispered. Because yeah, it was. Not because I broke it. Because I left. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, the diner was warm, the vinyl booth cracked just right under my shoulder blades. Marcy slid a slice of banana cream pie onto the table like always. No charge, no questions. Looks like a pie kind of day, she said. I nodded once. My phone buzzed. Again. It had been going off nonstop since minute 4. Voicemails. Emails. Slacks. Texts. Unknown numbers. No numbers. That sad little CTO trying to say please without saying please. The board's executive assistant, probably 5 minutes from crying. The same CEO who told me I was outdated architecture just last week was now probably debating whether to send flowers or cash. I let the phone ring. Didn't even flip it over. Because this wasn't revenge. It was just truth blooming in the absence of denial. They thought my silence meant irrelevance. Turns out it was load-bearing. Let them feel the weight of it at 8:09, the machine choked. Not sputtered. Not stumbled. Choked. The core transaction framework, the lifeline of the whole damn company, froze mid-cycle. Just stopped. It didn't fail loudly. It didn't crash. It simply quit cooperating. Like a tired horse sitting down in the middle of a racetrack. Queues locked. Order IDs stranded in memory. Auth checks caught in a loop so tight it was spinning disk like a roulette wheel in hell. Inside the ops war room, red alerts stacked like body bags. Clients couldn't access their dashboards. Internal sales tools went dark. 1,000 support calls per minute hitting a system already wheezing. The regional payment processor tried pinging the API gateway and got nothing but echoes. Slack channels turned into prayer groups. Then the shouting started. The CEO, red-faced and sweaty like someone had just stolen his prom crown, slammed a fist on the table and barked. "Call him. Now." Connor stammered. "We've been trying, his cell's dead." "Then email him. Message him. Walk to his goddamn house if you have to." Legal stepped in. We deactivated his credentials this morning. That includes corporate mail and Slack. So use his personal email. We don't have it." A silence followed that. The kind of silence that makes your stomach turn. The CEO looked around the room like he was seeing it for the first time. We don't have a personal contact for the system's architect." Someone down the line whispered. "He used a burner to run deployments. Said it kept distractions away." They stared at the empty chair I used to sit in, as if I'd emerged from it like some summoned demon. But I was long gone. At that exact moment, I was sitting in Marcy's diner, watching the local news on the fuzzy TV mounted above the counter. Volume low but captions clear. Breaking. Major tech firm faces system-wide outage. Sources project $300 million in immediate losses. The anchor fumbled the company name, said it like it was something sticky. Behind her, B-roll of our headquarters lit up the screen. Security guards holding off a local reporter, lights flickering behind glass like the place was possessed. I sipped my coffee. Lukewarm. Bitter. Still better than the company's crisis blend. Marcy refilled the cup without a word. She glanced at the screen, then back at me. "That your old place?" I nodded once. She raised an eyebrow. Should I say sorry or congratulations? I thought about it. Really thought. Neither. I muttered. Let's just call it gravity. Outside, an ambulance wailed in the distance. Inside, my phone buzzed on the table. Again. Unknown number. I let it buzz itself into silence. They weren't calling me. They were calling the structure that held them together. And she wasn't available anymore. It was around 10:12 a.m. when the desperation finally found its way into words. I was halfway through my pie. Phone still face down. Steam curling from the second cup of coffee Marcy had poured unasked. I'd just settled into that rarest of sensations. Peace in the bones, silence in the soul. When the notification blinked onto my laptop like a fly landing on a mirror. One email. Subject line blank. From an address I recognized only because I used to watch it send me useless system alerts at 3 a.m. Connor.miller@ops.sys by noon. The bleeding had gone from internal to very, very public. A preliminary audit landed on the board's desk like a bomb disguised as a PDF. 56 pages, double-spaced, time-stamped logs and archive patch diffs, all pointing to one horrifying conclusion. A single catastrophic flaw in the company's transaction scheduler, buried 5 years deep, had gone unnoticed by everyone but me. A flaw that should have collapsed the entire OpsNet backbone during Q4 2020 if I hadn't patched it manually, quietly, without approval, without documentation, because there was no time and no budget and no patience for nuance. I'd built the patch as a temporary fix. Told them in the meeting notes that OpsNet's core Q logic needed rework. They nodded, logged the ticket, then buried it under UX redesigns and strategic partnerships with SaaS vampires. And like every other fire I put out, they assumed it stayed out. Never occurred to them that someone had to keep the extinguisher warm. Now the flaw had resurfaced. Uncorked. Cascading. Because I wasn't there to keep the fragile logic in check. Because no one ever rebuilt it properly. Because Connor and his merry band of whiteboard philosophers treated architecture like a vibe, not a science. And now the data center looked like a war zone. Stuck jobs. Lost metadata. Authorization keys invalidated mid-process, locking out core services. Clients screaming. Contracts breached. The board didn't even wait for the formal spin. They called an emergency vote that afternoon. The CEO, who just 24 hours earlier was grinning in front of investors, talking about visionary pivots, was walked out with the kind of polite HR statement that usually gets issued right before someone's legacy evaporates. Departing to explore new opportunities. Yeah, like unemployment. The board named an interim triad to try and stabilize what was left of the ship. One of them actually had the guts to email me, said they were grateful for the years of silent excellence. Called me instrumental. Cute. Meanwhile, I was sitting across from a different kind of boardroom, sleek, quiet, corner office overlooking the river, reviewing a consulting contract printed on thick stock paper from their competitor. The offer was generous. Equity. Autonomy. A small team of hand-picked engineers and 0 middle managers. They even offered to license some of my legacy tools, on my terms. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But I did run my finger down the page to the clause that mattered most. Final architectural authority remains solely with consultant. That was the line they'd never have given me before. But now? Now they knew better. Systems fail. CEOs fail harder. But memory? Memory survives. The workspace was quiet. Not dead. Just peaceful. No buzz of performative meetings, no echo of forced enthusiasm, no corporate slogans peeling off cheap drywall. Just the low hum of a fan, the tick of an analog clock, and the soft, lived-in creak of my office chair as I leaned forward and opened the terminal. No logos on the door. No ID badge around my neck. No one breathing down my neck asking if I looped in marketing. Just clean air and control. A modest setup, a single monitor, and a private node spun up for something new. The cursor blinked on a blank screen. Patient. I typed 2 lines of code. Elegant. Efficient. The kind of lines that carry more weight than 100 PowerPoint decks and 15 steering committees combined. Then I hit enter. Across town, the servers at my old company flickered back into a kind of order. Not because of me, but because enough fires had finally been smothered. The failover had been jury-rigged. A skeleton crew was keeping it on life support. PR had slapped together a story about a temporary disruption due to vendor migration. And the new interim team was too busy begging clients not to jump ship to realize the infrastructure they were clinging to was still balancing on duct tape I left behind. Stabilizing, yes. But breathing? Barely. I watched the load balancer status report scroll across a private feed I still had access to, because no one had shut down the diagnostic node I embedded in the legacy backup. It wasn't even hidden. Just forgotten. Like me. I closed the feed. Didn't need to see any more. The phone beside me buzzed once. Another offer. Another apology. Another ex-employee realizing too late that legacy systems don't carry themselves. I didn't answer. Instead, I leaned back, cracked my knuckles, and let the silence settle. They fired the man. But they forgot he was the map. They thought you could replace continuity with a Jira template. They thought you could rip out institutional memory like a bad tooth and expect the jaw to keep chewing. You don't replace the system architect with a spreadsheet. And you don't fire the one who held the fault line together. So no, I didn't burn it down. I just stopped holding it up.